The smell of fresh coffee filled my tiny kitchen as I settled into the morning routine that felt like a quiet rebellion against the chaos of the world outside. My phone buzzed on the counter, Mia's name lighting up the screen. My older sister rarely called, and when she did, it was often for something. "Hey Mia," I answered, balancing the phone against my shoulder as I poured my coffee. "What's up?" Her voice was light, almost breezy, the way it always got when she was excited about something. "Hey Amelia. Just wanted to check if you could watch Shadow for us next week. We're going to the Caribbean." The words hit like a splash of cold water, and for a moment I thought I'd misheard her. "The Caribbean?" I echoed. "Yeah, all of us," Mia continued, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Mom, Dad, Alex, the kids, and us of course. It's been ages since we had a big family trip. We thought it'd be fun to do something different this year." My fingers tightened around the coffee cup, its warmth doing little to stave off the chill creeping up my spine. "When were you all planning to tell me about this?" I asked, my voice cracking just enough to betray my composure. There was a pause on the other end, the kind that confirmed everything I already suspected. "Oh," Mia said, her tone dipping ever so slightly. "Well, we didn't think you'd want to come. You're always so busy with work and all that." Busy with work. The phrase hung in the air, a flimsy justification for what I knew was deliberate exclusion. My mind raced through years of being the reliable one, the one who cleaned up their messes, lent money when they needed it, and stayed behind to take care of things while they went off chasing adventures. "And besides," Mia added, her tone brightening again, "Shadow really loves you. You're so good with him. It's just a week." A week. A week of them lounging on beaches and sipping cocktails while I, once again, played caretaker for their convenience. My throat tightened. "You didn't even ask if I wanted to come," I said quietly. "Oh, Amelia, it's not like that," Mia said, her tone suddenly defensive. "We just figured. Well, you're not really the vacation type, you know?" It was then I realized. I wasn't even considered. They hadn't thought about me, my desires, or the hurt that came with being left out. I was just a means to an end, a dependable presence in the background of their carefully curated lives. As I hung up the phone, the sound of her laughter still ringing in my ears, a knot of anger and sadness twisted in my chest. I wasn't angry about the trip itself, not really. It was what the trip symbolized. A reminder that I was good enough to watch their pets, but not good enough to be a part of their memories. The Caribbean. The word replayed in my mind, its sunny allure mocking me as I sat alone in my cramped apartment, staring at the empty coffee cup in my hands. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. This wasn't just about the vacation. This was about all the times I'd been overlooked, dismissed, taken for granted. And suddenly I knew something had to change. That evening I sat at my desk, staring at the glow of my laptop screen as memories played in my mind like an unwelcome highlight reel. The time Mia borrowed my car and returned it on fumes, laughing as she said, "Oh, I figured you wouldn't mind." The years I spent juggling 2 jobs to pay for college, while my parents covered her tuition without a second thought because she just needed more help. And now this vacation. The ultimate confirmation that I had always been a supporting character in their story. The kind, responsible Amelia, who stayed behind to water plants and watch dogs while they lived their lives. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes catching on the dusty globe I'd inherited from my grandmother. Its promise of adventure had once inspired me. But somewhere along the way, I'd let those dreams fade. My fingers idly spun the globe, and it came to a stop under my hand, Greece. Santorini. I whispered the name aloud, the image of its whitewashed buildings and sapphire domes filling my mind. A pang of longing pierced my chest. I couldn't remember the last time I had done something just for me. My heart raced as an idea took shape. Before I could talk myself out of it, I opened a travel site and began searching flights. My pulse quickened when I saw one. Athens with a connecting flight to Santorini, departing the day after Mia's family left for the Caribbean. A grin tugged at my lips. This wasn't about spite. Not entirely anyway. It was about reclaiming a piece of myself. I hit book before I could second-guess the price. A surge of excitement and defiance washing over me. This was happening. For the first time I was putting myself first. The fallout came swiftly. It started with a phone call from Mia 2 days later. "You're going to Greece?" she said, her voice high-pitched and incredulous. "Why? Why not?" I countered. I've always wanted to go. But what about Shadow? Who's going to watch him? I could almost see her frowning on the other end of the line, as if the idea of me having a life beyond her needs was unthinkable. I don't know, Mia, I said, feigning a lightness I didn't feel. Maybe you can figure it out. You're good at that, right? Her silence was heavy before she muttered, I guess we'll figure something out. The next day my mother called. Amelia, honey, I heard about this Greece trip. It's so sudden. Her voice was laced with concern, the kind that wasn't about my well-being but about how my actions might inconvenience everyone else. I just felt like I needed a break, I said firmly. You know Mia's trip has been planned for months, she chided. It's not fair to spring this on us. Couldn't you go another time? I stared out the window at the gray city skyline, the words bubbling up before I could stop them. Why is it that my plans are always the ones expected to change? Mom sighed a long weary sound. We just thought you'd want to help, Amelia. You're always so good at that. I ended the call before my growing frustration boiled over. By the time my father called, his tone sharp and clipped, I was ready. This is selfish, Amelia, he said. You know your sister relies on you. You could have talked to us first. Funny, I said. No one talked to me about the Caribbean trip. He paused, caught off guard, before letting out a grunt of disapproval. This isn't like you. No, I thought. It wasn't. And that was the point. Their reactions were textbook. Guilt-tripping dismissiveness and ultimately anger when I didn't cave. For years I'd bent myself into knots trying to fit into their plans, their needs, their vision of who I was supposed to be. Not anymore. As I closed my suitcase the night before my flight, I felt something unfamiliar but welcome. Freedom. The table was set with all the hallmarks of a classic family dinner. A roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and a salad Mom insisted was for show, as nobody would touch it. But the warmth of the meal couldn't disguise the chill in the air. Pass the gravy, Mia said, her tone as casual as ever, though her eyes darted toward me. I handed her the boat without a word, keeping my gaze on my plate. My parents sat across from me, their expressions tense as if waiting for a storm to break. The truth was it already had, they just didn't know it yet. So Mia, Dad said, his voice overly cheerful, you're all set for the Caribbean, right? Oh yeah, Mia replied, tossing her hair over her shoulder. Flights are booked, and we even got that snorkeling excursion Mom wanted to try. Sounds fun, I said, my tone measured. I bet you'll all have a great time. Mia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. She shot me a glance, unsure of my tone, before quickly recovering. Thanks. And Shadow's going to be in good hands with you. I set my fork down carefully, the clink of metal on porcelain drawing their attention. Actually, I said, my voice steady, I won't be here to watch Shadow. The silence that followed was deafening. What do you mean? Mom asked, her brows knitting together. I mean I'm not staying here while you all go off to the Caribbean, I said, meeting their gazes one by one. I'm going to Greece. I leave tomorrow. Mia's jaw dropped and Dad leaned back in his chair, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. Mom was the first to recover. Greece, she said, as though the word were foreign to her. Yes, I said simply. But you never mentioned this, Mia sputtered. You never even hinted that you wanted to go anywhere. Why would I? I asked, my voice calm but laced with the weight of years of frustration. It's not like anyone asks what I want. That's not fair, Mom interjected. We've always included you. Have you? I cut her off gently, my tone unwavering. Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I've been included when it's convenient. When there's something you need. Not because I'm part of the family, but because I'm useful. Dad's face darkened. Amelia, that's not true. I finished for him. Let's look at the facts. You planned an entire family trip without me, and only bothered to call when you needed a pet sitter. That doesn't feel like inclusion. That feels like I'm being taken for granted. Mia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. You're blowing this way out of proportion, she said. It's just one trip. No, I said firmly, my voice rising for the first time. It's not just one trip. It's a pattern. A pattern where I'm expected to rearrange my life around all of you. Where my needs, my wants, my achievements are always second to yours. Mom reached for her glass of water, her hand trembling slightly. "We didn't mean to make you feel that way," she said softly. "But you did," I replied. "And I let it happen because I didn't know how to say no. But I'm saying it now." The weight of my words hung in the air, thick and unyielding. For once, no one rushed to fill the silence. Mia broke first, her voice tight. "So you're just going to abandon us?" "No, Mia," I said, leaning forward, my voice quiet but unshakable. "I'm choosing myself. And I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable, but it's long overdue." Dad let out a heavy sigh, his shoulders sagging. "You're serious about this?" "I am." For the first time I saw something flicker in his eyes. A glimmer of understanding, even if it was buried under layers of resistance. Mom looked down at her plate, her face unreadable. Mia's lips were pressed into a thin line, her usual confidence stripped away. As I stood to clear my plate, I looked around the table at the people I'd spent a lifetime trying to please. For once I wasn't seeking their approval. "I love you all," I said softly. "But I can't keep being the version of me that's easiest for you to handle." I left the table and the stunned silence behind, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't an ending, not really. But it was a beginning, and it was mine. The moment the plane touched down in Athens, a rush of exhilaration washed over me. I was here, on my terms, living a dream I hadn't dared to admit to myself. By the time I stepped off the ferry onto Santorini's sun-drenched shores, the vibrant colors of the island seemed to mirror my newfound sense of freedom. That first evening I sat on the terrace of a small villa, gazing out over the Aegean Sea as the setting sun painted the sky in fiery shades of orange and pink. My heart swelled with the realization that for the first time, I wasn't watching life pass me by. I was living it. "I don't understand how she could just leave," Mia muttered, her frustration boiling over as she wrangled Shadow's leash. The dog had been less than cooperative since they dropped him at a sitter's last minute. "Well," Dad said, his tone unusually sharp, "maybe if we'd treated her better she wouldn't have." Mia froze, her usual rebuttal caught in her throat. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," he replied, lowering his paper. "All of us. We've leaned on her for years, never asking what she wanted. I think she finally got tired of it." Mia looked down at Shadow, a twinge of guilt replacing her irritation. "I didn't mean for her to feel left out," she admitted quietly. "I thought she liked helping." "She probably did at first," Dad said. "But how often did we ask if she was happy? Or if she needed something from us?" The weight of his words lingered as Mia thumbed through her phone, suddenly curious about what Amelia was doing in Greece. By the second day, I was fully immersed in Santorini's charms. I strolled through cobblestone streets lined with bougainvillea, hiked along the caldera's edge, and savored freshly baked spanakopita at a tiny cafe overlooking the sea. That evening I uploaded my first travel blog post, Sunsets and Self-Discovery. My journey to Santorini. I shared photos of blue-domed churches, whitewashed villas, and the dazzling Aegean, along with reflections on what this trip meant to me. The responses poured in almost immediately. Friends and acquaintances cheered me on, commenting on how brave and inspiring it was to see me seize this moment for myself. Among the messages was one from Mia. "Amelia, I saw your post. Santorini looks incredible. I'm sorry we didn't include you in our trip. I didn't realize how much you wanted something like this. I hope you're having the time of your life." I stared at the message, my emotions swirling. Her words felt genuine, though part of me hesitated to trust them. Still, it was a step. A day later, a message from Dad arrived. "Amelia, your photos are amazing. I'm proud of you for going after what you want. We should have supported you sooner. I hope you'll tell us all about your trip when you're back." I blinked back unexpected tears. For years, I thought they couldn't see me for who I really was. Maybe I'd been wrong. Or maybe I'd never given them the chance. While they were snorkeling in turquoise waters, they were also grappling with the inconvenience of managing Shadow's care and adjusting to life without their dependable Amelia. Mom, who prided herself on her seamless planning, had admitted over dinner that she missed having me to lean on. "She's doing what she wants, though," Dad had said, raising his glass of wine. "We should be happy for her." Mia, scrolling through my latest blog post, had nodded silently, a thoughtful expression on her face. On my last evening in Santorini, I stood on the terrace again, the golden light of the sunset casting long shadows across the island. My phone buzzed with another message from Mia. Amelia, I was wrong to assume you didn't want to come with us. I see now that you've been holding us together for so long, and we never stopped to think about what you needed. I hope we can fix things when you're back. This time I smiled as I typed my reply. Mia, thank you. I'm glad you're seeing this trip for what it is. A fresh start. I can't wait to tell you all about it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold, I felt the pieces of my life shifting into place. I wasn't just reclaiming my independence. I was teaching my family how to see me as I truly was. The turquoise waters of Santorini sparkled in the midday sun, their beauty mirrored in the lens of my camera. Photography had always been a quiet passion of mine, one I rarely had time to indulge. Now I captured every detail, the crumbling charm of ancient streets, the vibrancy of the marketplace, and the quiet dignity of a fisherman mending his net. Each image told a story, and I shared those stories through my blog. As the comments and messages rolled in, one stood out from the rest. Your photos are incredible, Amelia. They tell a story words can't always capture. I've been showing them to everyone at the office. They're proud of you, and so am I. It was from Dad. I blinked, rereading the message. His praise wasn't flowery or overly sentimental, but it meant more than I could say. My father, the practical one, the fixer, the man of few words, was truly seeing me for the first time. The next day Dad called. I've decided not to go to the Caribbean, he said without preamble. What? I asked, shocked. There's no reason for me to be there, he admitted. I'd rather stay back, catch up on some work, and I want to go through all your blog posts, really read them. Your photos, your stories, they're extraordinary, Amelia. I had no idea you had this in you. The tears came suddenly, unbidden. Thanks, Dad, I managed to say. I mean it, he continued. And when you get back, let's grab lunch. Just the two of us. I want to hear all about Santorini. For the first time in years, I felt a closeness to him that I hadn't realized I missed. That evening, another message arrived, this time from Mia. You know, I've been reading your posts every night. I'll admit I was jealous at first, seeing you live this incredible adventure while we were dealing with Shadow's chaos. But the more I read, the more I realized how much courage it took for you to do this. I could never have done it, Amelia. I want you to know how much I admire you. The words felt like a balm, softening the sharp edges of years of resentment. I replied simply, thanks, Mia. That means a lot. The next call came from Mom, her tone uncharacteristically subdued. Your photos are beautiful, she said after a moment of silence. I had no idea you were so talented. Have you been doing this long? Not really, I said. I've just never had the time, or the space, to explore it. I see, she said quietly. You've always been so responsible, so dependable. I guess I didn't realize how much we've relied on you, and how little we've given back. Her voice broke slightly on the last word. For the first time, I felt the weight of her reflection, her regret. When you get back, I'd like to talk. I want to understand more about what you want. What makes you happy? The words were tentative, but they were enough. When I returned to my villa that night, I found a package waiting for me. Inside was a camera lens, carefully chosen for the kind of travel photography I'd been doing. A note was tucked beneath it. Keep capturing the world the way you see it. You've got a gift. Love, Dad. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my fingers over the sleek barrel of the lens, a deep warmth spreading through my chest. By the time I landed back home, my family had shifted in ways I hadn't expected. Dad greeted me with the camera lens in hand, eager to hear about every detail of my trip. Mia invited me over for coffee, showing genuine interest in my blog and brainstorming ideas for my next adventure. But it was Mom who surprised me most. In the living room, I noticed something new. A framed collage of my photos from Santorini hanging on the wall. I thought they belonged here, she said softly, gesturing to the display. It's a reminder of everything you're capable of, and everything we've overlooked. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. For the first time I felt seen, not as a caretaker, a helper, or an afterthought, but as myself. And that was the greatest gift of all. Thanksgiving at the Walker house had always been a loud, bustling affair, filled with laughter, clinking dishes, and the warm smells of roasted turkey and cinnamon. This year, though, the atmosphere felt different, softer, more deliberate. I sat at the table, my usual spot at the far corner replaced by a seat closer to the center. It was a small detail, but it spoke volumes. Mom bustled in with a platter of mashed potatoes, her eyes meeting mine as she set it down. "I hope you made room for dessert," she said with a smile that reached her eyes. Across the table, Dad was helping Mia's kids with their drinks, his voice carrying a rare gentleness. Mia was unwrapping a loaf of bread she'd baked herself, a new hobby she'd taken up after a few too many failed attempts at pie. It was Mia who cleared her throat first. "So we wanted to share some news," she said, glancing at Dad. "We've been talking, and we thought it was time to make a change." "Not just a change," Dad added. "A new start." I arched an eyebrow, curious but wary. "We've been thinking about our next family trip," Mia said, her tone light but serious. "And this time we want you to help plan it." Dad leaned forward, his expression warm. "We're thinking Italy. But only if you're on board." The words hung in the air for a moment, their weight sinking in. "Wait," I said slowly. "You're asking me to plan the trip? With you?" Mia smiled. "Not just asking. We're counting on it. You've seen more of the world than the rest of us combined. Who better to guide us?" For a moment I couldn't speak. After years of being sidelined, this invitation felt like the ultimate acknowledgement, not just of my value but of my voice. Dad cleared his throat. "We were wrong to exclude you before, Amelia. You deserved better from us. We want to make it right." Mom nodded, her eyes glistening. "Your photos from Santorini are in the living room now. Every time I see them, I think about how much of you we've missed." "It's beautiful there," I said softly. "Italy will be different, but just as breathtaking." "Then it's settled," Dad said, raising his glass. "To Amelia, for reminding us what family should really be about." The others joined in, their smiles genuine and free of the tension that had hung over our dinners for years. As we ate, the conversation buzzed with ideas about Italy, Rome's ancient ruins, Tuscany's rolling vineyards, and the Amalfi Coast's sparkling waters. Mia pulled out a notebook to jot down suggestions. A far cry from the secretive trip planning that had once shut me out. Felt strange, this new dynamic, but in the best way. After dinner, I wandered into the living room, where my photos from Santorini now hung in a simple but elegant arrangement. Each image told a story. The winding streets of Oe, the golden light on the caldera, the fishermen pulling in their nets. Mom joined me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "They're stunning," she said quietly. "Thanks," I replied, the word carrying more emotion than I expected. "You've always been so much more than we gave you credit for," she continued. "But I hope we're starting to show you that now." I turned to her, meeting her gaze. "You are." The cracks in our family's foundation weren't gone, but they were healing slowly but surely. And for the first time in my life I felt like I belonged, not as a fallback but as an equal. As I stood there, surrounded by the warmth of home and the promise of new adventures, I realized that the best journeys weren't just about the places you visited. They were about the people who finally saw you for who you were. And I couldn't wait to start the next chapter.